The gist endorses for President of the United States, Kamala Harris. Elections are choices, and the clarity of this particular choice emanates from the glaring deficiencies of Donald Trump. The word disqualifying as regards Trump has been thrown around a lot. He inspires it. This or that objectionable policy, so many offensive utterances, all said to be disqualifying. A lot of that is polarized rhetoric. For me, Donald Trump's disqualifications did not start on January 6th, but they certainly culminated in the Capitol on that day of death and violence.
5 to 50 be advised, Capitol Police 1 advised they're trying to breach and get to the Capitol.
Yeah, copy.
It wasn't just the actions of the rioters, but all that went into Donald Trump's pursuit of the fake electors scheme. One of the charges that Donald Trump would face if he doesn't win the election and fire, and he also says jail special counsel Jack Smith, is obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. Just listen to the plain words of that crime. That is exactly what Trump did. Good Americans should stand against that. Your vote gives you a say in that criminal charge. I can't get around the idea that I have an obligation to make sure that this accurate charge for those serious acts gets brought. Donald Trump supporters will tell you that all of the criminal charges against him are political. They're just lawfare. And I have my own opinions on a lot of those. The Bragg hush money case, pretty aggressive. The document storage charges, clearly a violation, but one I think that could be remedied with a fine. But Donald Trump absolutely was attempting to prevent or delay the counting of lawful, certified electoral college votes from multiple states. It's a quote from the January 6th committee. It accurately describes what went on. And in this, I feel as a voter and as an American, I have a responsibility. As far as I can do anything about this crime, I must do something about this crime. And that thing is to cast my vote. Donald Trump was trying to rob Americans of their votes. I could not live with myself if his accountability were simply wiped away by fiat because he got elected. If I were a prosecutor, I would not charge Donald Trump with incitement or treason. In fact, during his 2 elections and during his 2 impeachments, we were told the remedy of so many of his acts was political. Okay, I say, responsibility accepted. It's incumbent on anyone who actually believes in America as a democracy to deny office to a person who would treat the country, the process, and the Constitution in the way he did, and the way he indicates he will once more if he loses. I'd rather have a bad and boring president than a charming and dynamic king. I would. And if you're a Trump fan who sees his shtick as amusing or necessary or understandable or the price of his good policies, ask yourself that question. What would you rather have? A president? If you get a president, even if they're bad, you get to elect a new one. The old one goes away. Here's what the Trump fans will answer when given the choice between bad president or fun king. They'll say, stop. He's not a king. There were guardrails the first time. There will be again. He's all bluster. You're taking him too literally. And that's why I come back to what he literally did in the run up to and on the day of January 6th. And he is saying he will pardon the January 6th rioters. Now, if you're voting for him, do you think, oh, he won't do that? Or do you think, he'll just pardon the nice ones? Or do you not care?
My question is on those rioters who assaulted officers.
You have to
would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You would pardon those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just they were convicted by a very tough system.
I am an institutionalist. I never say burn it all down in any context. I never say that about institutions that have deeply disappointed me. Not the universities, not journalism, not electoral politics. Sane adults have to act in this way. But the Trump voter, and by this I mean the plausibly persuadable Trump voter, will probably say, yes, January 6th was a low point. But they will also say that won't happen again. And what will happen is better policies under Trump. So I will say for the record, and this part is not with the hope to influence a plausible Trump voter, that I think Kamala Harris's policies and records in so many areas are superior to Donald Trump's: COVID relief, poverty reduction, environmental issues, foreign trade, tax rates, abortion. His tariff policies are utter folly, the only saving grace being that he's not serious about implementing them. You know, and to be fair, her wealth tax policy is not quite folly, but it will never actually pass. But the plausibly persuadable Trump voter, they will probably say, all right, that's all domestic. Let's go to foreign policy. That is a Donald Trump strength. I hear that a lot. And on foreign policy, it is hard to judge what Harris would do. And this is a worry. If I had to predict who would be stronger as a supporter of Israel, it is Trump, and I strongly support Israel. Although it must be said, she has only ever said the right things about backing Israel, and Trump is wildly erratic. There's one more foreign policy area that I want to talk about that not many people do. I don't think it's an electoral winner, but it's Ukraine. I think Kamala Harris is clearly superior on Ukraine. My preference is the continued funding of Ukrainian resistance so as to make Russia pay enormous costs for what they have done and to make them reconsider doing it again. As long as Ukrainians are willing to fight and die to repel their invader, we should support them, not with blood, but arms and moral clarity. Harris beats Trump on this issue hands down. But I do understand why many Americans prefer Trump. They have suffered under inflation and have concluded that his economic policies were better. His tax cuts did spur growth. That did happen. And everyone benefited. Now, the Democratic talking point is out, but everyone didn't benefit equally. Sure, but let's not make the perfectly equitable the enemy of good economic and wage growth. I also understand that many Trump supporters and non-supporters also believe that the flood of immigrants across the border is a huge failure of the Biden administration. It is impossible to rebut the statistics and the realities. However, Trump's stated solution, mass deportation of 20 million, is worse than the problem itself. Now, I know the answer to that. Oh, 20 million, it won't be 20 million, that won't happen. And once again, we're in the category of he won't really do it, he just says it. As with tariffs, as with freeing the rioters, as with prosecuting Jack Smith and his other political enemies. And if we're wrong on any one of these acts of bluster, it will be terrible. It does strike me that hoping to be let off the hook by the lies of the politician that you're voting for, banking on that, is poor practice at the ballot box. Of course, and to be very fair, the Kamala Harris campaign depends on the idea that she was lying or not really serious about so many of her stated policy preferences when she ran for president in 2019, decriminalizing border crossings, fracking, Medicare for all. Here's a high-profile one, state-funded surgeries for trans inmates. Probably heard of that one. You might think it's not at all important as a national issue. I don't bring it up for that reason. But it is clear that she seems to have changed her stance, and she never really explained why or how she came to either position, the old one or the new one, in the first place. I will meet you more than halfway plausibly persuadable Trump voter. Harris is espousing moderate policies today, having rejected the very policy she endorsed in 2019, but not really offering any explanations. None of that's inspiring. Does she have convictions? Did she see the light? Were there actual reasons for her change of mind and heart? Is she just measuring the political winds? And if so, if those winds shift once more, will she shift with them? And by the way, the winds always shift. Implicated in these inconsistencies are the excesses of the Democratic Party, the excesses of the left. This is a worry. This is more than a worry. This is the main misgiving among the people I talk to who are plausibly persuadable Trump voters. So not QAnon adherents, not vicious anti-immigrants, the plausibly persuadable. People who are bothered by Trump but don't trust Harris. They are worried about the march of leftists, the identitarianism, the social justice activism, if you want to call it wokeism. That's agreed upon term that we all understand what it means. And I'm here to say on this, you and I have agreement. I'm very sympathetic to the idea that social justice activism and leftist causes and the oppressor-oppressed binary, it's caustic, it's destructive, it does not lend towards human flourishing. Thought policing and ideological purity tests and the eschewing of pluralism, the censorious left, it came very close to destroying me. I get it. I'm with you. And on this point, maybe you expect the turn for me to say, but Trump is still worse. But that's not where I'm going with my argument. My argument is that a Trump victory exacerbates all those excesses. A defeat of Donald Trump would do much more to stop the march of wokeism than a loss by Kamala Harris would. If Trump wins, the forces of resistance will redouble. We saw it once before. He exists as a human agitation machine, a cycle of woke provocations and anti-woke counterattacks. It's inevitable. In fact, it's his oxygen. But if Harris wins, the march of leftism has a chance to abate. Because if Harris loses, all the leftists will say, that's what you get for watering down your message. That's what you get for catering to the middle. It'll be hard for many in their party to rebut him. So maybe plausibly persuadable Trump voter voting for Trump feels better, but it will make wokeism worse. And what of Trumpism? If he wins, it increases. If he loses, I think Trumpism is delivered a fatal blow. You know, Trump's preferred candidates almost always lose their close Senate races. His election lies are toxic to voters. The things he says he's for when he's not the one saying them, they aren't really popular. Trump can get attention like no one else and escape accountability, except now we are accountability, you and I, our vote. Your vote to punish Harris won't set back all the attendant nonsense of the left and of colleges and of postmodernism. Harris isn't core to that. She's trying to work that system. As we said before, it's hard to know what her real beliefs are. But your vote to punish Trump really does punish Trump if he loses. It's like a stake through the heart of Trumpism, and that's what I am advising. Do it. Vote him down. Even though it does risk his wrath, even though it invites some rioting and years' worth of lies. Poll workers will be smeared. Local officials will be threatened. Less powerful officials will have to go into hiding. That will all happen with a Trump defeat. And isn't that reason enough to be done with this man and to be done with all that he's done not for, but to America?